I'm Esther Dillard on the Black Information Network, chatting with writers and authors who offer an added perspective for our listeners. This is Color Between the Lines. Joining me is Black author BB Alston to talk about his second book in a children's book trilogy. It's called Amari and the Great Game. It's a series about a Black 13-year-old girl who finds out she was born with magical powers in a world that most people think is ordinary, and it is filled with supernatural beings hidden from most people's eyes. Alston's first book, Amari and the Night Brothers, has been published in 27 countries and is an international bestseller, including a Sunday Times bestseller. In the United States, the book has spent more than 30 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list, and in 2021, Alston's book was named the overall winner of the Barnes & Noble Children's and YA Book Awards. Welcome, Mr. Alston, to the BIN.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
All right. I didn't get a chance to read your first book, but I'm nearing the end of your second book. I have, let me see. I have 6 chapters to go. I just showed you, 6 chapters to go. And I honestly, it felt kind of like Men in Black meets Harry Potter with a bit of Lord of the Rings in there, but the difference was Amari was a Black girl from the housing projects. What prompted you to create the character of Amari and this magical world?
So the world came about. I had tried writing for a long time and it didn't happen for me. And so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna start trying to do the med school. So I was doing those long science classes, and I was studying one day, and I guess Men in Black is one of my favorite movies. And I thought, like, what if it wasn't just aliens? What if it was like all the magical creatures and that we say? What if that was in the world, and like maybe a witch was your next door neighbor, or maybe your mailman was secretly a werewolf or something like that. And so I just kind of played with the world and kind of created stuff like that. And then Amari just kind of popped into my head, and I knew what age she'd be and how she spoke and how she thought, and a lot of it was based on how I felt around that age. And so once I had the story and the character, I just kind of put the two together, and that's how I came up with Amari and the Night Brothers.
Wow. Is where Amari comes from an integral part of the series, and why or why not?
Oh, absolutely. I think when you're from a certain background, especially an inner city kid, you kind of get those stereotypes kind of apply to you, like what kind of person you are, what you're going to be. And so I thought a story about overcoming that, and learning to not be ashamed of where you're from, and that you can't let other people define you. I thought that's such a powerful message for kids. And when the idea of Amari came to my head, I thought that's a story that was, it's kind of the heart of Amari, even with all the magic and stuff going on. It's a young girl learning to believe herself is kind of the basis of the story. And I thought that was a great message for kids to get.
Awesome. Given the first book and all of its success, which is awesome for your first book, what did you feel pressure that the second book had to outdo the first one?
Well, you always had that thought in the back of your head, how confident you try to pretend to be. You always had that thought, like, man, what if I blow it? Like, what if people hate the second book? But I think you have to just kind of trust your gut and just kind of write the best story you can, and usually that steers you the right way.
Often, the authors that I speak with that share with our audience, they share a perspective in their books that addresses something that possibly our listeners have dealt with in their own lives. Can you talk about how your character Amari experiences racism in both the real world and the magical world? And why did you think that it was important to include that in the book for kids?
Okay, so I think when you're writing a fantasy book with all kind of magical, crazy stuff happening, it's good to kind of ground it in real life to give the reader something to hold on to. And so I thought, just the idea of Amari being different and what makes her different. She's a poor kid, she's a Black kid, and all that. So when I had those things about her, I feel like I couldn't just like kind of gloss over that. And so when she's, starting the story off, she's this poor Black kid who's going to this private school on the opposite side of town with these rich kids. And obviously she's going to stand out and feel like an outcast there. And so I felt like that was a lot of fun to kind of mirror that when she goes to the supernatural world, where you would think, they'd be a lot more open-minded, but, people are still going to have certain biases, based on where you're from. And so I thought that was like an interesting parallel to kind of bring that, just kind of see that she couldn't escape it just by going to a different place. she had to kind of learn to believe in herself and overcome that in her own mind for her to be able to grow in the story. And that's kind of the emotional heart of the story. And so I thought that was such a great message.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting with Elsie, her best friend. You know, she talks about how Elsie is going to be accepted into this new school and her relationship there, and how that even though Elsie's going away, Elsie was kind of like an anchor for her, and she had to kind of like
Absolutely.
get away from that and become her own person, which was I thought was really interesting in the book. For those of you who are just joining us, I'm Esther Dillard, and on this edition of Color Between the Lines, we're chatting with the author BB Alston. He's written a second in a three-part series of a children's books called, the book is called Amari and the Great Game. What kind of response have you gotten from young readers about Amari literally being, black girl magic,
Oh, I mean, I've gotten such a great response from kids. They're so quick. They send you an Instagram message and it'll be everything from, oh, I love this in the book, like, oh, I didn't love this so much in the book, to giving you writing tips and what should happen in the second book and third book. And so, they have no filter. They kind of tell you exactly what's on their mind. I love that about them. And so I have a lot of fun just finding the kids and seeing how they, whether it's they didn't like reading before, but they found my book and now they like reading. I mean, that's such an amazing thing to hear as an author. And so, or even, maybe I had a reader who was dealing with a bully, and then seeing Amari stand up with her bullies, it kind of gave her the courage to do the same thing. And I think, getting able to be a chance to getting able to be a part of people's childhood is such a special thing. And so if you're able to do that, it's so amazing. So I'll write for kids as long as they'll let me.
What were, I guess, some of your author influences that encouraged you to try a hand at writing fiction? And were you always confident that you were going to be successful as an author?
Oh, definitely not. So I first started writing like way back in the 8th grade. And I used to write these terrible horror stories with my classmates. It'd always be like a field trip that went terribly wrong, like the bus crashed and now we're in the woods and we got to escape zombies or something crazy like that. And my other classmates would like gather around and kind of like see who made it to the end. And I think that was the first time I realized that, something I wrote could make other people like happy. So that's kind of where I got the writing book from. As far as reading, I think Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was big for me. I think that was like 4th or 5th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And just the idea of a kid from like modest means, who like had these big dreams, and he didn't let that stop him. I kind of identified with that a lot, because that's kind of my background too. And so from there, I just kind of kept writing, kind of kept it to myself. When I got to my 30s is when I was like, let me just see if I can do this professionally. Like, you kind of have that thought, like maybe, let's see. And then I got like years and years of no's, and it wasn't. I don't think I had kind of gave up when I was doing, like I said, I was doing the med school thing, and then I got accepted to a med school in Pennsylvania, and so I was getting ready to move, but I didn't have enough money to move, so I was just doing a temp job to kind of pay for the move. And I saw this pitch contest on Twitter where you just like pitch your story, and the agents would like go through and decide which ones they like. And so I said, I'll pitch my story and see what happens, and led to my agent, which led to an editor, and the book got picked up in I think we're in 30-something countries now. And it's been kind of a fairy tale since then.
Wow, that's amazing. And are you still doing medical work? Is that still your goal, or what happened with that?
Well, with writing being taking up so much time, I wasn't able to pursue it. I keep telling myself I'm gonna go back to it, but we'll see, because I'm not getting any younger. But we'll see. I keep telling myself that, I'm gonna go back, but we'll see.
Wow. That means you have a passion for a lot of different things. And I'm sure that some of those things that you've learned with medical, your medical pursuits, could possibly influence some of your writing too. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, just learning about this magic where you can control the human body, and it's like knowing that kind of thing is kind of integral for that. So yeah, you just all kind of stuff you pick up, you can kind of put into the story.
Awesome. Can you just talk a little bit about what readers can expect for the last book in this trilogy?
So in the first 2 books, she kind of stay in the bureau for most of the book. I mean, in the 3rd book, she's away from the bureau, so you get to see a lot of how the known world and supernatural world kind of interact. So I think that'd be kind of exciting to see kind of how how the rest of the world deals with that kind of that mix between the supernatural world and the known world. There'll be new characters and new challenges. So I'm excited to see what the readers think.
Well, my final question, of course, I think you kind of answered it, but I wanted to let you have the floor in terms of what are some of the subtle messages that you really want young readers to come away with?
I think the main thing I want to come away with is this kindness, and we're so divided these days, to treat people who aren't like you Still treat them with respect, like whether they, they think different, they look different, or they feel different than you. To still give them a chance. Don't rely on stereotypes. I think that's a message I try to hammer through in every book. It's just kindness and treating other people well. I think with Amari, she gets treated so bad in the first book, and it's still some of that in the second book too, where she's kind of judged for something she can't help. And so I think this having Amari overcome that, having readers see her overcome that, if that's their own experience, that they're dealing with something similar, or even if you find yourself doing that kind of stereotyping other people, maybe that'll show you how the kind of effect that has on people. Maybe that'll get you to second guess how you're doing things. And so kindness is definitely something I try to push through in each book. So that's probably the ultimate message. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. Looking forward to reading and finishing the first one that I'm on, and then going back to your first one so that I can understand the background. And then we gotta invite you back when you finish your third one and publish and talk about that.
I love to come back.
All right. Thanks again for joining us on the BIN. That's BB Alston, author of the children's book, Amari and the Great Game. That does it for this edition of Color Between the Lines. I'm Esther Dillard on the Black Information Network.